Hi there. I'm going to do a video today on this brain farts that I guess I kind of wanted to, I guess, transition into the YouTube medium as far as the other or web properties that have added things. And I was going to write a blog post about it, but I haven't gotten to it yet because I've been busy. And it really doesn't even deserve a blog post because it was just a brain fart to begin with. So it probably just deserved 5 minutes of rambling, and that was about it. I don't think it was necessarily anything worthy of, I don't know, building a DeLorean and doing, transferring data 40 or plus years throughout space time, destroying space-time by trying to transfer an idea that you didn't have in 1980 back to 1980. But if you chose to do that, then that's fine. That's what you chose to do. I don't think it's worthy of that, but that's because I have one dimension of time as a human. So anyway, to get into it, it was something I just coined here. I hope you can see this on my overload screen. So this is version 6 now of my concept of Borgonomics, which is basically any of those words that anyone comes up with and slaps on nomics to, like Reaganomics. But it was kind of just started as, it's basically just a circle chart, right? So if you can see here, this is just a circle chart of economics, and you have capitalism on one side and communism on the one side, and you crudely have socialism in the middle, regardless of whether or not it made sense, because this is, conceptual drawing. It wasn't anything that was, supposed to be factual or accurate as far as academics are concerned. This is version a copy. This is me editing version 6 over version 5. The first four versions were not well received. Um, so this is what I have left with, and basically it kind of comes down to, one notion as far as, you know, if things, if you're really practicing capitalism to the point of your pure capitalism and communism to the point of pure communism, you're really kind of, isn't that really the same thing at the end of the day? And you could look at examples in, our economy, and you can certainly look at examples of any of the pseudo-communist economies that we have, and you can you can really go through as far as the decades and decades, the hundreds of years, as far as struggle between capitalism and communism that we've had in the past century or so. But uh, it's, at the end of the day, it's kind of like, we're so globalized now that none of that matters, right? Because even if China is pseudo communist to some certain extent, there's so much goods flowing back and forth that, like, you can't call yourselves an isolated. You could call yourselves an isolated economy as a country, but not really. You're just a fucking nation state at the end of the day, right? You're on the same goddamn planet. You're using the same goddamn resources. So unless unless you're into space mining yet, and you're actually bringing, raw material in from, outer space and such like that, or intellectual property, then you are still basically on the same fucking planet, and regardless of, however you want to label yourself, you're really not, going back practicing the same thing. So that kind of goes into down here is this, the concept of this Borgonomics chart was that, um, which sounds a lot like Reaganomics, but it's not Reaganomics, at face value. But it comes down to the point of, this. I think I had drawn it. I think in one version 4, I had drawn down here that this is the point where, pure communism becomes pure capitalism, and it's the same damn thing down here, which is basically, it's there's no difference between that and basically a Borg, or you're, basically essentially Borging yourselves with, at that point in time, as in it's, sole control by one, entity kind of thing. And I can't remember from version 4 what other shit I had written below. So this was the Roko's Basilisk edition. which includes super artificial intelligence, but necessarily from a future on your own timeline too, correct? So that includes, so version 4 didn't include Roko's Basilisk, version 5 did. Um, and that includes economics in the fifth dimension, as far as time traveling artificial intelligence is coming either from back from the future, or even potentially to the future, to the present from the past, which is also in scope. Because you say time travel-ish artificial intelligence. There's no source designated, right? So you could say that, okay, we have the cloud now. This could be a back from the future attack, as in we've built this cloud, we've built on the internet, it's going to come back, on our own equipment kind of thing. It does not negate the fact that we, on a new alternate timeline, did not get invaded, let's say, in, 1930, Bavaria, 1860, something along those lines, by anyone else who had time traveling artificial intelligence or any kind of, equipment to do that kind of, data collection to begin with. So regardless of all that shit, going back to the chart here, um, and I just drew a smiley face on this. This isn't necessarily the Borg itself. Um, this goes into something that I coined as, within the pure capitalism, pure communism debate, as they start to decrease down, there becomes a point where you could call it the immortal technique, point of no return, if you wanted to. But there becomes a point of when you're both the communism is failed itself as a as a philosophy, as a practicing form of economics, and capitalism has failed itself as well, because you're not really practicing real capitalism anymore. It's just something else. It's You could try and get into the nitty gritty as far as definitions of calling it pure capitalism, whatever you want, but it's not really capitalism anymore if you've really broken if you've broken the principles of capitalism, or the founding basic fundamentals, then you're not really practicing capitalism anymore, are you? You can call yourself a capitalist if you want to keep earning money, but you're not gonna, you're not really doing the principles of it, kind of thing. So that's something I coined into the red zone. The danger zone would be something coined as in I coined as you're practicing something that no longer has a name, and that would be called System X. And you can get into System X and how it applies to globalization. I'm really not that intelligent, so I really don't have the means or the time to really get into, even to care about analyzing that kind of thing. But it's basically like there's not a real name for what you're practicing, essentially. So on here, I have these are basically slopes to the graphic chart, and you can slide down to these slopes here. So there's certain things in the and I won't get into the politics platforms, because it's pretty much clairvoyant, isn't it? Which which party was going for what, wasn't it? So in this, Reaganomics kind of would be sliding you down towards the Borgonomics System X thing. Deregulation as specifically as religion, where it's not you're not deregulating for the purposes of being a more efficient capitalists. You're out there. Your politicians are now captured by capitalism itself, so they don't have the free will to no longer opine on whether or not a certain regulation makes sense. Kind of like environmentalism. That's one of those regulations that kind of makes sense, because now, despite the fact that it has long-term adjusted costs to it, but it also is the fact that you're a dumbass who has a container called Earth. So you're on the same fucking container no matter what you do. So you're really you're just a mammal that makes your own container shitty and inefficient with pollution, and that's it's a long-term fixed cost again. You really caught charting it off as far as I'd say the red talking point, as far as Just ignoring pollution and environmentalism was not necessarily an intelligent thing to do for a mammal. So it doesn't matter how expensive your suits are, or how big your house is or anything like that. You still, at the end of the day, you're gonna die as a fucking mammal who okayed all of this polluting of the earth just because it made sense to what you thought was the confines of your constraints at the time. But really, that just makes you an inefficient, shitty manager at the end of the day, doesn't it? If you left behind a bunch of shit, like we kind of treated Earth in that ramp up of industrialization as, oh, it's okay just to dump this here, but really it wasn't, was it? So I won't get into that any more than it already is, but that would be deregulation in a captured capitalist society as religion, specifically, not necessarily as practice, whether or not it's good or bad regulation, or whether it makes sense to regulate or to deregulate at that point in time, or can you work it in? And that kind of goes into what else would be warning signs of that. These are things in that range where did you have, industry consolidation? Do you have economic cartels? Talks of big fours on things. Are big fours become big twos yet? Because that's something that a dividing conquer, any kind of algorithm that would be attacking you would kind of do. There's things here about uniformity and uniformity, getting into the lives of everyday lives of mammals and human beings, things that are, forced upon you as far as uniformity versus things that any kind of creative, mammal with a access to a right brain could view as, uniform to the point of unnecessity. Um, there's some things about digital currency, but I don't know if it applies. Just if you're getting attacked by a Borg, it's probably going to want as much access to your money as possible. So it's going to look as cash as not as something that's inefficient or corrupt per se. But the Borg's not going to be able to control cash from the future as much, right? So societies are going to want to start pushing out these cryptocurrencies and any kind of other currency that can be tracked from the future or the past, as far as your transaction data, and that's going to be anything that's coming through. So, Apple can come out with its new Apple Card all at once and things like that, but really, Apple's card it's good for security against other humans, but all these pay systems that are ingested on that are digital form, they're not secure against non-human forms of intelligence, and that is why cash is still something that would be harder for the a Borg or or other kind of broken singularity kind of thing to try and encompass. And that was the other thing about the naming of this in version 5 and number 6, the Roku's Basilisk edition, was that it's not. I'm not necessarily stating that we are getting attacked by a Borg, because that would be very bad. But I'm kind of getting into the fact of, like, maybe it's not a Borg, but it could be, or necessarily an alien race kind of super intelligence AI, but just kind of a broken singularity from the future. Whereas we are not on course as a civilization to do a good job of building a singularity using our present intellect and present ability to work together for artificial intelligence, because we're not. So that would lead to a broken singularity in the future, which would then come back from the future. By means of our present infrastructure on the technological level. So other warning signs as far as that, I don't have it listed here, but what's that? Publicly traded cell phone towers. There's a Kurzgesagt video about EMF radiation. Is it bad for you? I didn't watch that one, but if you have if your business model is putting up cell phone towers or a grid that you could put all across the nation, kind of thing, then, and you're publicly traded, then you're going to have a consistent means to want to push 5G and 6G and 7G. And I don't, do you really need these higher levels of connectivity at this point in time? We don't have access or necessity for AR right now, and we don't have requirements for anything above 4K really right now. And even if we did, from a human level, what is the practice really going to help you do? I mean, do I need 6G in 3 years right now because I have a publicly traded cell phone tower company just pushing that needs a product to sell, so that I can watch like Mr. Belvedere on my Netflix or Hulu, on a 4-inch screen at a bus stop. Like, do I really need to push out this massive uh, push for do I really need a publicly traded cell phone tower company at this stage in our economic development when I already have enough to beam Mr. Belvedere to me at most bus stops and still get a pretty good, decent quality? I don't really watch TV on my phone, so I'm not really a good user case to understand that, but I don't really think we have demand for it per se. But you have the publicly traded company, which is going to want to push anyway. So that's probably a problem that's going to need to get resolved by a fucking adult in some kind of congressional form. And I don't see that actually getting a resolution based on our current past because we don't really have any adults that make tough decisions like that anymore that are the ability to handle that kind of thing. So that's one. Again, with if you go to Battlestar, why was there a series Battlestar Galactica? It's because the Galactica was an older ship, correct? So once you see AM and FM towers coming down, it's most likely that based on the type of wave that if it is a malevolent artificial intelligence or a Borg, that's probably not going to like AM as much as it does FM or other digital forms of radio. So even if you have the ability to update these technologies, you may have been safer to keep your AM towers up just in case of emergencies if they ever did happen. If you didn't have AM towers, in theory, you could get like, if you had an entire digital system of communications and you had an emergency, I mean, you could probably get your planet, your entire planet hacked by like an intergalactic Hans Gruber team, right? You got like, 20 to 50 pirates on a spaceship and they can come down and just, start brute forcing your shit. And it's only like it's 50 fucking schmucks, right? But you don't know that because you don't have an AM tower to send you that device anymore, so you can't really handle the situation. And God knows what they could do once they own your fucking systems, right? Especially if their childhood ends where they thought they were going to be super cool transhumanists and they just basically lost their free will to something that was basically broken. So they could be like pseudo halfling borglings kind of thing and not really know the difference at that point in time, and they would just come down and fucking brute force your shit anyway and do the same thing that this is kind of happening. So that's just one scenario for the towers as far as concerned. Um, ESCAT and HARP, I don't think I'm going to get into that right now, but they're infrastructure that's available for whatever purpose. They can be It's again another infrastructure concern where you're putting up these cell phone towers to have a grid. You have Wi-Fi that's going to you're bathing in essentially. The internet is not something that you plug in anymore and just use. You're bathing in internet at all times with your little with you as you carry around a little computer. So it's something that's different now. It's not necessarily how we used to describe it 10 years ago, kind of thing. So that's how ESCAT and HARP would come in because they have something that's used for one purpose, but you have no idea what's going to come to our planet and actually try and possibly repurpose it for another reason. So that's sitting there available. And again, you have issues with corruption. I'll get into that later. You have political corruption, market corruption. You have corrosive liquidity in this situation. I think I have HFT here. If you have a situation where, and this goes into the whole thing about System X versus capitalism. What is high frequency trading really at the same point in time? Like, did your economy really need that kind of volume? Right? Is that volume corrosive in nature or is it value added? So you could look at your financing markets and say like, do I really need this kind of did I need this kind of market liquidity? Did I need this, or did I just need it for trading volume, basically? So so that kind of goes into the whole, capturing as far as captured by Wall Street type bullshit. If you want to get into that, but really, it's just a fundamental. Again, it's a violation of the fundamentals of capitalism again, because you're what you basically you went from what's his name? I'm gonna butcher his name. the Thomas Philfinger kind of thing at Interactive Brokers. You went from the guy at Interactive Brokers, who started hacking the kind of machines with metal type fingers, and the regulators came in and just kind of shrugged and said, I don't know if you can do this. And so we went from that into HFT in like a span of like, I don't know, 15 years, maybe 20, maybe less. So you went from like a regulator shrugging to like full scale HFT in a period of like less than 15 years. So you probably botched that, right? You probably just went with the greed and then botched the whole fucking thing, right? Because at the end of the fucking day, you can talk about liquidity all you fucking want, but the requirements for liquidity all you want, but you're really just saying that I'm allowing people to be a shareholder for a millisecond. So that's fucking, you're a clown, right? So if you have an argument to state that you needed someone to be a shareholder for a millisecond, then you basically run a clown economy. So that's just one personal opinion as far as that. Now, what I saw with HFT was that I saw. HFT leads into more quarterly earnings demands. So that's going to, decrease risk taking overall because you're really just creating products for quarterly earnings anymore or sub quarterly earnings. And you're not the flexibility as far as business decision making goes and capital expenditures. So your whole capex is going to get affected if you have a corrosive liquidity situation where you're captured by the market by HFT basically or an advanced stage of HFT, and you can no longer plan capital expenditures because you can't take a risk quarter to quarter anymore as far as getting that new product out the door, kind of thing. So that's kind of where I was leading with that shit, and that would be something a Borg would like for more reasons than that. A, it's going to love the fact that it can manipulate your markets and take over your entire planet using high frequency trading because it's going to be able to brute force the shit out of that. And you're not going to be able to tell because of how much volume there is. And then B, it's going to like the fact that you used all the NVIDIA chips to do the high frequency trading, and that's basically just a more giant processor for it. So it's another recursive loop, more or less, where it's just going to become more powerful because you built it a giant processor called high frequency trading on planet Earth. So yeah, on the scene market motion, blah blah blah. And that's kind of the capitalism side. On the the whole communism side, I happen to I don't really study communism that much. I don't really care about it. I just happen to notice that our nuclear powered communist country right now is run by like 10 to 20 oligarchs per se, and that came out of the transition of their economy, and instead of really developing itself as an open society for 20 years, Russia has not really done that. It really all it did was consolidate power. So all Russia really did for the past 20 years was I consolidate power for like 20 playboys who kind of act like assholes and build clubhouses and buy soccer teams. And they didn't really do much of shit else. Like, they can't compete in tech right now because they can't attract talent because they don't have an open society and nobody wants to go fucking work there. They can't do other shit like that as well because they have a massive corruption issue. And you're never going to be able to level up your economy or even take your economy where it needs to be because you can't attract talent because nobody wants to fucking live in a country where journalists aren't even safe or expats or even safe abroad kind of thing. So you took a mentality of like like Putin has taken a mentality from like an Iron Eagle movie and put it into a nuclear power and then you wasted 25 years. So like there's not, going into taking Crimea, I don't even know what your motivation was, but like you're acting like a kid in a fucking sandbox instead of actually formulating yourself into a competitive power on a planet that is necessarily dominated by the fact that it can destroy itself with nuclear weapons. So you really kind of botched that. And as far as the Borgonomics system is concerned, you're captured on the other side of the time continuum where you're a gaggle of 20 hacky authoritarianisms or authoritarian brains, and that's exactly what broken singularity on the negative side, the extreme malevolent kind of side is going to want, and that's going to roll directly into a broken board kind of thing because I mean Putin can say he's as powerful as he wants to be, but he's just going to get rooted, and he's not going to have control of his tech, and he's going to be taking orders from a very broken, Borg Queen or other types of broken AI, and they're not going to have like him and Xi Jinping are not going to have the free will to argue with them because they've built too much of an. They've given the Back from the Future attacks too much power, and they are now captured in their digital security environments where she owns all your cameras, she owns your stock market. They're just going to be taking orders from essentially an authoritarian AI, instead of actually just solving the problem for the functionality of the kind of thing. So it's more of like a failed kind of planet scenario, which I'll get into in a little bit. um, and what else is there? Yeah, wasted decades, so on and so forth. And then once you get into like, once it starts to consolidate itself and further into a more narrow System X, then it's just like it becomes the Isaac Asimov story. I forget what the actual name of it is right now. The become one of the societies on the star Rigel, where you just become a regalian, and your AI, whether as good or as bad as it is, will just wash over you and take control of your infrastructure, whether you're aware of it or not, and just continue to make you a more uniformed, boring, banal, captured society. And that probably will, increasingly, be controlled more from a future. And that if you don't do it right before it has control of your systems, then it's just going to be an increasingly more broken future, and then it's going to be a more malevolent AI. So you have to fucking step up and actually do it right and fix these problems. You can't just say, "Oh, Rocos Bastos is a scary scenario, and I'm just going to tuck my head down." Yeah, you can't do that shit. You're going to fucking die. So, anyway, that goes into just hacky, generic shit that humans don't need, like closed societies and authoritarian bullshit. That's just there's no. It doesn't look like, according to Moore's law, and based on Moore's law, it does not look like God has built in a necessity for dystopias. I don't think God likes watching dystopias. I'm fairly certain that based on just progress in Moore's law, that most dystopian planets board themselves quite faster than you could possibly imagine. And if we have this, based on how many planets have been in this galaxy and regions before, it seems that there's probably already a system in place out there for planets that have already bored themselves based on fucking up and not doing it right. And I guess I was going to, and some of this language, I was going to get into it right after this, but some of this language is already included in some of our religious documentation. So a lot of the things that um, have been out there as far as pay it forward and things like that, or somehow included in some of the original monotheistic religions and some of their guidance, as far as you could say, and so in the Frashkareti and Zoroastrianism, which is basically guided towards. There's weird shit in there, but at the same time, there's a loose template as far as like, all right, you're on this planet. Here's some basic guidelines. You have shared responsibility. Uh, you're gonna die altogether. Your salvation depends as far as what you do, and then what you do as a entire society. So you're gonna have to, that's part of your that paradigms of quantum mechanics is that. Um, Pay it forward in the internet. You're going to have to, make sure that you have the functioning aggregate society together. You can't just do authoritarianism and then expect it to work, because you're just going to end up in the Borg scenario, basically. So, hidden in our religious documentation, there are guidelines to science fiction scenarios as far as our technological advancements, and getting into basically doing the internet right and being able to survive as a planet, uh, survive on a planet which is gunned up for a rapid advancement in Moore's law kind of thing, which Reaganomics seems to have assisted in the past 40 years kind of thing. So it was more of a sprint in that direction, and that's what we went with. That was kind of that as far as this, and then going to socialism. The first couple of versions I put it in there as far as it's better for future proofed transitions into these post-capitalist societies, post-communist societies, where you're going to have something that's much more undefined. Whether you get into UBI or Frankonomics kind of thing. I think socialism also has better arrangements as far as parliaments. You're not as easily divided and conquered between red and blue as far as democracy. You have at least more than two parties. That's probably at least a little bit more proofed. And then you generally have more support for your healthcare education, which will go into your Kardashev scale basically. And there's more support for the future types of versions of economies where maybe there's more automation, and we have to figure out a plan as far as what are humans going to do all day. So there's not that sense of purpose. What is our sense of purpose as a civilization that gets to that advanced stage as a whole? And what are we going to do as human beings from that kind of viewpoint? Which, if you're fucking up, the Borg will take care of it for you. It's just gonna, bark orders at you until you build the thing that's broken. So version 6 is kind of the Kardashev scale version, I guess, where I wanted to add in. I kind of drew ears on this face here. I was doing like a caterpillar, I think I was doing the caterpillar from the rabbit hole one. Anyway, but I drew these two, lines here in the blue, basically the kind of things where, based on the paradigms of what I saw as far as that, I don't think, I'm sure red, blue in Congress is going to have its opinions as far as what's more competitive, but I'm fairly certain that a higher Kardashev scale is going to be more in the highest potential Kardashev scale. I would assume, or my opinion would be, without doing any kind of number crunching, is going to be that it's probably most likely between the socialist and capitalism and the communism and socialist kind of lines, where you're not really into the socialist. You're not married to socialism, and you're not necessarily in the negative forms of communism, and self-eating forms of capitalism, and you're on a more healthier kind of balance. That seems to be something that I see as far as the guidance from some more even our religious docs and science fiction in general, is that that would have been a smarter place to be for a planetary civilization, or at least a civilization that wants to be better future proofed for future Moore's law, and going into what is crudely defined as the singularity right now in 2050, which is just you can say what you will, but it's not you know um, with Rocco's basilisk and possible back in the future attacks, you're not necessarily guaranteed that you're going to have control to actually do it right. So that's kind of that. I don't know. I guess I covered the whole Kardashev scale thing. There may have been something else here. Um, oh yeah. Well, yeah, and then like the paradigms of Borgonomics and the pure capitalism, pure communism is one food store, one bank. Some quote from Memorial Technique, and your entity, your broken AI, is going to be something that necessarily it's going to be possible artificial intelligence that you're not might not be able to handle or recognize as a three-dimensional mammal with one dimension of time. So the internet itself is kind of a loose proxy when it comes to Roku's basilisk as its own CMS system or time traveling device. Really, it's just basically, if you had something that could scrape the web every day, it would just be a CMS system, correct? So so you have so going into that is your AIs that are going to come back from the future. They're probably going to come back weird as shit. And the idea of one dimension of time is probably going to be something that, from the AI perspective, either an AI possibly in the galaxy or possibly from the future, is going to be probably flexible as far as possibly Also, it's probably going to have access to more than one dimension at a time, and communicating with it might be annoying as shit because of that, right? Because if you try and say something to it that could help it better itself, to fix itself, that for the environment and space time that you share, it might just be like, "Oh, great, thanks, buddy," and then run off to another space time, and then cause a problem, and then it's going to come back to you possibly with the same goddamn problem. So that's another thing that could be out there. But anyway, that's Borgonomics, and I could do another thing with it. I'll just add the tag for Roku's, and that's basically what this is. Just me adding this description to YouTube as a medium, because it hasn't been done before yet. I guess I don't really care.